In the Perspectrum podcast, we discuss controversial topics. Outside of this context, Michael and I are both working professionals. While doing this show, we are not acting as agents or representatives of our respective institutions, and none of the views that we express reflect the outlooks of our employers. So don't come to my office and throw toilet paper at me.
And I don't have an office, but don't come to my cube. Hello and welcome to the Perspectrum. I'm Michael Bloom.
And I'm Nathan Seelove.
Today we have what could end up being a pretty heavy episode, but at least for a little while we'll try to keep it focused on, not the heaviest part. So Our first segment, we're going to talk about the 2024 presidential run, and then we're going to stop talking about that for a long time. Our second segment, we're going to talk about an update on student financial aid forgiveness. There's been some progress here. No, I should say regress. And we thought it'd be a good idea to update everybody on it. And then finally, we will be talking about some of the recent mass shootings and our perspective on those.
Specifically, the focusing mainly on the Q Club shooting, but of course there have been other mass shootings in the last week that I think we really need to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of things that we need to talk about, Michael, what are the COVID numbers?
Yeah, so worldwide, we've hit 647 million total COVID cases, averaging 381,000 per day over the last 7 days, which is up actually 21% from the previous week. In terms of death, we've hit 6.64 million total deaths, averaging 1,090 deaths per day over the last week, which is up about 9.5% from the week before. In terms of vaccination worldwide, about 68.5% of the world's population has at least one dose, and 62.9% have two doses, which are up, just a little bit from the week before. In the U.S., we've hit 100.5 million total cases, with 22.6 thousand cases per day over the last 7 days, which is down 16% from the last time we recorded a couple weeks ago. And in terms of death, we've hit 1.104 million total deaths, with average daily deaths of 135 over the last 7 days, down 24% from a couple weeks ago. And in terms of vaccination, we've hit 80.5% of the U.S. population with at least one dose, and 68.8% with two doses. Boy, that might be the fastest I've ever done the COVID numbers.
Yeah. Speaking of wanting to do something fast and then move on and not come back to it for a while, let's talk about the 2024 presidential election.
Man, what a great transition.
Yeah. So the reason why we want to talk about this is because everybody's talking about it and we don't want to talk about it. But because everyone's talking about it, we want to go ahead and talk about it now so that we don't have to talk about it again for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially. We want to, there's been a ton of buzz since the midterms with Trump's announcement. And I think it's worth just kind of dispensing with all of that now, because it will be, likely it will be months until we have real concrete information on the 2024 election. Yeah. And so we might as well just deal with the information we have now and go on from there.
And also, there's some really funny developments. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say funny, because the last time I thought there was a funny development when some crazy dude announced that he was running for president, that crazy dude became president. So maybe I shouldn't say that, but
nothing's funny in politics anymore.
Nothing's funny in politics. Kanye West is running for president.
But this isn't the first time.
Apparently in 2016 he briefly said he was going to run or some shit, and then he just kind of didn't. I don't know, but
I think he actually signed up late in in 2020, but that didn't go anywhere because it was June.
Yeah. Was it 20? Okay. So he has announced that he's running for president, and according to him, at a recent dinner at Mar-a-Lago, he asked Donald Trump to be his vice president. And Donald Trump flipped out at him.
That's pretty early to be asking for a vice president.
Yeah, like you usually announce the vice presidential announcement happens after you get the nomination, not before a single primary has even happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Over a
Man.
year before a single primary has even happened.
Can I just call out, if Kanye becomes president, I'm moving away. Like, legit, I am moving, and I know that's a privileged position to take, but I have that privilege, and I will use it.
I mean,
God, that'll be horrible.
That's what I thought when Trump became president, but like, I mean, I wasn't really in much of a position where I could have done that at that point anyway.
Sure.
And I probably still won't be in that position. But not only did Kanye West, according to him, and by the way, I'd just like to point out, there have been conflicting reports about what actually took place and what was talked about and whether it was heated or whether it was...
Kanye isn't a reliable source?
Well, but the other source is Donald Trump.
Oh my God.
Which therein lies the problem. We have conflicting reports about what they talked about and how the meeting went at this Mar-a-Lago dinner from Kanye West and Donald Trump, two people who are notoriously terrible sources. But one thing that we do know, which I just find absolutely insane, is that Kanye West brought Nick Fuentes to the dinner with him. And if you don't know who Nick Fuentes is, congratulations, you might have slightly better mental health than I do. He is this insane white supremacist, anti-Semite Holocaust denier.
Jesus.
So naturally, he is helping to advise Kanye West on his campaign. And on top of that, you know who apparently Kanye West decided to choose as his campaign manager? Milo Yiannopoulos.
Oh my God. Oh. It's like he went and found a list of like all the canceled people. He's like, I can't afford Bill Maher, so I guess. Oh my God.
His campaign is being managed by Milo Yiannopoulos, that weird guy that was gay, but then he was a reformed gay.
Mm-hmm.
And like he said he was able to convert himself out of it, but he's still apparently living with his partner, and they're just roommates now, I guess. But anyway, not as relevant. But yeah, so Nick Fuentes, noted Holocaust denier, white supremacist, which by the way, I find it kind of weird that a white supremacist is like supporting Kanye's campaign. But I guess he hates, it seems like he hates Jews more than he hates black people.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he, common ground, I guess. Apparently that's what it takes for a black man to get accepted by a white supremacist. Just if you hate Jews enough.
Jesus.
Yeah,
we live in such a fucking weird time.
We live in the stupidest timeline.
This is just ridiculous.
This is the stupidest timeline, all right? Somebody stepped on a butterfly. Like somebody went back in time, stepped on a butterfly, and just fucked everything up. Because this is the weirdest timeline.
This is the
weirdest idea, timeline. Like if you had told me in 2014 that in 2022 we would be having a conversation about presidential candidate Kanye West, who was being advised by Nick Fuentes, and his campaign was being managed by Milo Yiannopoulos, and he went to have dinner with former president Donald Trump,
former president, former game show host, like steak
at Mar-a-Lago,
fake university salesman.
If you had told me that in 2014, I would have said, I'll have whatever you're smoking. Because that's some strong shit right there.
Yeah, but then we all ended up having what they were smoking.
And it gave us a bad trip, and we're still tripping.
So, so let's get back to the serious note. Because honestly, fuck Kanye and fuck Donald Trump, but only one of those two people has like the realistic possibility of totally screwing us over in the next few years. So...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would not underestimate Kanye West at this
I
point.
mean, only because we're terrified of underestimating people that we think should not be
Yeah,
possibilities,
exactly,
but-
for good reason.
Yeah,
all
yeah,
right?
we've been hurt before.
We all thought that there was no reality that could possibly exist in which Donald Trump would get the nomination, let alone become president.
Sure.
All right, we all thought that because we had functioning brains at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now our brains are broken. All of our brains are broken. Even if we know that Trump is bad, our brains are still broken.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe there is a reality in which Kanye West becomes president, and I know that that's scary to say, and I'm hoping that his anti-Semitism is at least a little bit too far for people to accept. Like the blatant anti-Semitism is a little bit too far for people to accept, but I refuse to write it off.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough.
And of course, the of the people that are either have already announced that they're running for president or are absolutely definitely going to run for president, it's honestly shaping up like the smartest one is going to be Ron DeSantis.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem like it's going to be the case.
And that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a big problem. So like, we talked a little bit about Trump's announcement. In general, like he's lost a ton of ground, even with the Republican Party over the last few years. So like one poll from NBC News in October 2020 found that 54% of Republicans identified more as Trump supporters than as supporters of the Republican Party. But a same poll just before Election Day found that had dropped to just 30% of Republicans. So like a huge drop off in popularity, and a huge drop off in feasibility, I think, as well. So like Trump is the first president since the Great Depression to lose the House, the Senate, and the presidency in a single term, and then immediately like turned around, and like every single like political move he's made since leaving office has been just stupid and unpopular, and then helping the Republicans have like a historically bad performance in the midterms. Like even the people that might be Trump supporters, to the degree that they are pragmatic Trump supporters and not just, personality cult supporters, may be looking for like a more feasible, more possible candidate, especially if they're motivated by animosity towards Joe Biden in a similar way to the way Democrats were motivated by an animosity towards Trump in 2020, where we went for what seemed like the safest candidate because we were just terrified of the alternative.
Yeah. Which I never believed was the safest candidate.
We never,
but and what's interesting, looking at polling now, and a lot of this polling seems to have shifted after the midterms.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're looking at head-to-head matchups between Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump, when it's just the two of them, Ron DeSantis is usually either winning or even with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Now, it does change a little bit once you add up the possibility of other people. So like the anti-Trump voters do seem to be spread out a little bit more when they have other choices besides Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
But when it's just Ron DeSantis versus Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis is winning in a lot of these. Now, what relevance does head-to-head matchup polling have? Like
in November or December 2022.
Potentially not that much.
Almost none, yeah.
But at the same time, there could be a little bit of a snowball effect.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Because if you're starting to gain popularity and people are starting to see that popularity, it's very possible that that's going to continue to compound. Because right now, what Ron DeSantis needs to do is he needs to convince people that you need me in order to win. Like I am your best bet.
Yeah.
And I am becoming the new leader of the Republican Party. And the more the polls shift in his favor, the more he can make that argument.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally fair. And this is also like he's polling really well, despite presumably lower name recognition than Trump.
Yeah.
Like his recognition is like universal. So basically he's probably polling at like the top end of his range. Whereas DeSantis probably has, much... he still has people out there to whom he can make his argument that he is the right the right nominee. So I agree there could totally be a snowball effect. At the same time, DeSantis could crash and burn.
Yeah.
You know,
He absolutely
he could
could.
totally fail on the national stage. You know, who knows what skeletons may lie in his closet.
But then again, he colossally botched the pandemic response in Florida.
Sure.
And ended up having one of the highest mortality rates in the country. And it only made him more popular.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Yeah. And I think that's a big takeaway from this segment in general. Like, we have some information. We don't have enough information to tell what is going to happen. And I think that's just really important to keep in mind as we think about 2024. It's just our ability to predict at this point is pretty much totally limited.
Yeah. Which again is why we're doing this segment now, so we don't have to do it again later.
Yeah. I mean, Trump could literally be a felon by that point.
Yeah. So let's switch over to the Democratic side.
Yeah.
Because I want to ask you this, because I want to hear what your thoughts are. Do you think that Biden runs again?
I don't know. I think he probably does.
Yeah.
I think so. What he said that, you know, he's been more bullish. He seemed more bullish about running again since the midterms.
Yeah.
Putting out, like, you know, when asked about it, like putting out like kind of more confident statements. And he said that he's not going to make any announcements until like the new year, after he has an opportunity to like discuss it with his family and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think he probably will, especially if it's Trump.
Yeah.
I think like Biden will continue to believe that he's the best alternative to Trump, or most able to win against Trump. And so if Trump is like actually viable, like if he's not a felon or not in prison or anything like that, then I think it's like Biden will probably try to take it on himself to run again. Now, I think he will be primaried. I think if Biden runs again, I think there's enough support among Democrats for an alternative that other people will primary him. And I kind of worry a little bit about what that could do. But yeah, I think that's probably the case.
I could see that. I don't think he will be primaried, at least not by a serious contender. Like,
really? Just because there's so few people in the field that like...
Well, because it just doesn't normally happen.
Sure.
You know, when it comes to like, even Trump, like he was primaried, but he wasn't primaried. Like,
not like seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like there were some people that ran, and like technically the Republican primaries were happening behind the scenes, but no one was paying attention to them because like Trump was not going to lose it. All right. And just looking at the polling data right now, even though when you look at a lot of polling data about Democrats' public opinion about whether or not Biden should run again, you do see in most of the polls I've seen, at least, that in almost every single case, they say, no, he shouldn't. But, you know, seemingly paradoxical, every time he's included in a primary poll, he is the complete favorite. Like I'm looking at 538 right now. Like in Emerson, having Biden, Harris, Sanders, Buttigieg, Warren, Newsom, and Whitmer, Biden's ahead by 25 points.
Yeah,
like
totally. A recent YouGov poll found something similar. Like the percent of people that thought Joe Biden should run in the primary was 44%. So low, but still, you know, still like 13% above Kamala Harris, right?
Yeah.
But the percent that would choose him as their top candidate if he were to run was 26% versus 8% for Harris. So, you know, again, like a minority, but a sizable minority. And that's all you really need for a primary.
Yeah. And also he's the default choice. I mean, he was the default choice back in 2020, and he's even more the default choice now because he is the president.
Yeah.
And on top of that, just looking at the people that are closest to him in polling, I mean, Sanders, I cannot imagine he's going to run. He's 81 years old.
Yeah.
By then he will be 83. I love Bernie. You all know I love Bernie. I don't think he's going to run. I really don't.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't vote for him again, but like, he'd be 83 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, Biden will be, Biden will be 82.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. So
He'll
yeah,
only be 82.
I think
But
I agree that like what gives me the most doubt about whether he'll be primaried or whether he'll run again is the rest of the field.
yeah,
Like there's just so many familiar faces that were rejected in the past.
yeah.
Like literally
And-
Hillary Clinton is on the list. It's like, God damn it.
God damn it.
Get the
Yeah,
fuck
and-
out of here.
And like, I look at some of the people that are closest on the list. Like, besides Sanders,
Yeah.
the other two biggest contenders are Harris and Buttigieg. And
Yeah.
honestly, if you give me a primary and you say that my choices are Biden, Harris, and Buttigieg, I'm gonna have to go with Biden. I
Yeah.
mean, I am not a fan of Biden. I will say that he has probably been the best president of my lifetime, which is a low bar,
Yeah.
but still, he has done actual good things.
Mm-hmm.
He's half-assed a lot of those good things, but he's done some actual good things. And in terms of some of the biggest concerns that I had about like bad things,
Mm-hmm.
like my concerns about him being a war hawk,
Yeah.
I mean, to an extent, yeah, but to a much lesser extent than previous presidents have been. I mean, the drone program has dramatically scaled down under Joe Biden
Mm-hmm.
to the point where it barely operates anymore, which I think is great.
Yeah.
There are definitely criticisms to be made about the way he got us out of Afghanistan, but we needed to get out of Afghanistan.
Sure.
So I guess with Biden, my biggest issue with him is not what he has done, it's what he hasn't done.
Yeah. Sure.
And my biggest issue with people like Harris and Buttigieg is that Biden ran as a moderate, Harris and Buttigieg ran as a progressive, and then as a moderate.
Sure.
At least with Biden, we know what we're getting.
Yeah.
With them, they're two-faced. They're not going to actually fight for anything. They're going to fight for what they think is most is going to be most helpful to help with their political careers. And
Yep.
the thing I like about Biden is that there have been many cases in which the media has turned against him, but he stood his ground when it was the right thing to do because he is an ideological person.
Sure.
Again, his ideology is being a moderate Democrat, and I disagree with that, but at least he will stand firm on a lot of those values. And when he does the right thing, he does usually stand firm on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think all of those are really great points. A couple thoughts just on Biden, and then one thought on the primarying. So two thoughts on Biden. First is that I think with an incoming Republican House, even with the Democratic Senate, Biden, who's most popular and is polled the best when he's passing stuff and doing stuff and solving problems, that's when he looks the best, will be able to get very, very little done.
Yeah.
With the Republican House. And so my hypothesis is that his approval rating, as low as it is, will not recover very much over the next couple of years. And it might slump down even more because unless he can it's really hard to make the argument that oh, we can't get anything done because they're being obstructionist. It might be true, but it's less so well, you should have tried harder or whatever. And so it's not really, it's reputation mitigating, but it's not reputation accretive, right? It might save you a little points, but it's not going to make you look better. The other point is, just to the age thing, and I don't want to harp on his age too much, except for the fact that the rate of decline mentally, physically, in terms of health, when you get older is much faster. So the idea that we're going to reliably be able to predict Biden being in good health in the next 2 years, I worry a little about that. There's a non-zero chance that a significant health problem plagues him over the next 2 years that prevents him from being a viable candidate.
Yeah.
On the primary thing, on whether they might primary, I think you're right that the rest of the field I don't really feel is super strong, like a very strong alternative. There's no one who's like seems great that we might
Yeah.
want to go with. My only thought is like, if there are people that are trying to like capture all the Biden vote, but like without some of his liabilities. But at the same time, to your point, I think Harris and Buttigieg are way more Democratic team players.
Yeah.
And so like if Biden decides to run, like, and they're the two leading secondary choices, like I think you're probably right that like they're probably not gonna stick their necks out and step out of line to challenge him.
Yeah. When I said if it was between them, I'd probably choose Biden. That's a theoretical that I don't think will ever happen.
Yeah,
I don't think Biden's going to get primaried by his own vice president or his own transportation secretary. That's just not going to happen.
That's probably true. That's probably true.
But I will actually disagree with one of your predictions.
Mm-hmm.
I think that his approval rating will actually increase, and here's why. Obama's did. And Obama found himself, in a lot of ways, in a similar situation to Biden. All right? Coming into the presidency when the economy was kind of shit. And having to deal with obstructionism. Now, in the case of Obama, a lot of that obstructionism happened towards the, within, right after midterms, because prior to that, he had a supermajority.
Yep.
But even then, like, there wasn't a lot of transformative things that he did try to pass.
Mm-hmm.
For Biden, on the other hand, though, he has been facing a similar level of obstruction. He did try to pass some things. He did pass some things. And he's basically going to be facing a similar path that Obama did. Because what's happening the biggest reason why people disapprove of Biden right now is because of the economy. Because they see the gas prices and they see who's president and they think, well, he caused that.
Sure.
But because we know that that's not necessarily the case, that we're still dealing with the fallout of the pandemic, which means that as we slowly get further and further away from the pandemic, people will unjustifiably give him credit for that. Like, when the economy gets better, inevitably, as we do slowly start to recover from this inflation, people are going to give Biden credit for that. Now, they shouldn't necessarily, depending on what he might do, because the president has significantly less of an impact on gas prices than people pretend that he does.
Yeah.
But they probably are going to. And the fact that the economy was starting to get better towards the end of Obama's first term is a huge reason why his poll numbers started to go up when they really needed to.
Sure.
And I think that there's a good chance that happens with Biden too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's contingent on the belief that the economy will continue to get better as we get further away from the pandemic.
Yeah.
And a lot of experts are like indicating that we might be heading more towards a recession and then away from one. But we'll see. I mean,
we'll see.
These are all
I could be completely wrong.
Well, but ultimately that's like a factual question.
I accept the idea that I could be completely wrong.
But I think all of this to say, I think we're calling the right players on the board, the right variables that could help predict the ultimate outcome of the 2024 election. Yeah. But where they all land,
and one thing
not
I'll
even CNN knows.
Yes, because they're notoriously good at predicting things. One last thing I will say, though, what I think would actually be the ideal scenario at this point would be a dark horse. Mm-hmm. Someone pulling an Obama. Mm-hmm. I think that the best thing that could potentially happen is Joe Biden decides not to run, and then a relatively not as well-known politician comes out of nowhere and pulls an Obama. And there are a few people that I think could do that. There's one person that I would love to do that, but is probably a pipe dream. But I mean, looking at people that have been starting to make a name for themselves, I'm looking at Raphael Warnock, mm-hmm. who, is somebody who was able to win in Georgia the first time. It's very possible that he'll be able to win in Georgia the second time. Jon Ossoff, who made a name for himself when he became the face of anti-gun like fighting against people in Congress owning individual stocks.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody else that we might not have known, somebody that I'd love to see, and again, I'm pretty sure this is a pipe dream, but I'd love to see Katie Porter run for president. Because she is one of the few leftists that I've seen in Congress that both understand left-wing economics
Yeah.
and agree with left-wing economics.
And understanding it is kind of key to explaining it.
It is.
And that's what Bernie got right.
It is. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see. We're gonna see. I think we'll put this issue to bed with this segment for a while. I think the key is, we should not let the positing about the presidential election soak up all the oxygen in the room. I think we should continue to think about, push for policy, think about, what Biden's doing well, what he's not, what can be done with a Congress that's split. And not worry too much about predicting a super uncertain future until we get more information.